Alrighty. Hi there. It's Chris from Airwindows. And what I'm thinking to do today is a little more coding. And perhaps not so much coding of the reverbs, because I made a good start on that, but there's something I wanted to try that will hopefully be a little quicker. I mean, I've got a bunch of irons in the fire. I've also got further experiments to do on the, and let me just take a moment to fiddle with my microphone so that you can hear it a little bit more clearly. I've actually been fooling around with all kinds of things like the mic placement. The mic placement at the moment is right here. And for the video that I did, I had it right up here. But I was getting a lot of annoying popping noises, and so I need to change that. And the reason I'm streaming is because the install of fiber internet is delayed. Something has gone wrong. I don't know what went wrong. It wasn't my fault. I promise it wasn't my fault, but turns out they cannot install the fiber today. Or at least they said they can't install the fiber today, so if they just randomly show up, it will be a shock and a surprise. And shocks are not good for me at this time. But anyways, we are streaming, and I'm going to see whether I can't do a little plugin that people might have run across, and it's known as the Oxford Inflator, or something kind of like it, because I ran across somebody who had worked out the algorithms for what the inflator actually is. And it's wave shapers. And I already do wave shapers, but it's not quite like any wave shaper I've got. But I've also been asked to do a thing called a bit shift wet dry control. And maybe I can do something like that, because we've got these supposedly Oxford Inflator algorithms. And you kind of go from plus 50 to minus 50. And plus 50 is the top, and then minus 50 is the bottom algorithm. But these algorithms remind me of something. Some of these algorithms involve the formula 1/16 times x squared, or 1/16 times x to the fourth power. Well, that is a shifting of bits manipulation. Multiplying something by 1/16 is like multiplying it by 1/2 or 1/4. It's going to be shifting bits, and so it's going to leave the mantissa of the audio waveform. Oh no, we are talking about literally the one from Oxford. Two things in the bottom control, and also note that the top control is 2 times the input minus the input squared. And there is a feature that allows you to clip it. I might leave that off. But a number of the things that the Oxford Inflator apparently does, because somebody matched this in like Melda Waveshaper, wrote in some algorithms, and were able to get a complete and total cancellation between the Sonox Inflator and their Melda approach. And they showed what the algorithms were, meaning that I can try that, but I'm not going to do it exactly the same. What I'm going to do is, I keep looking at the microphone. I don't know why I'm doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take parts of it that already shift bits to do their math, and probably other part, like I'm going to change one feature in this algorithm and see what I get. Instead of having it be 1/16 times this and that, and then 3/8 times x cubed, it's going to be 2/8 or 1/4 or another shifting of bits. And I'm going to make that alteration in it, at which point it will no longer be Oxford Inflator because it won't be quite the same waveform. I'm also going to check and see whether it's an algorithm I've already done, but it won't be quite, because it won't be quite the same. But that is the gist of it. I should be able to make something, and I'll probably call it like Inflamer or something like that, so that I can do this type of equation. And we're also going to have the crossfade be done with shiftings of bits. The crossfade is going to be balancing the one with the other, but one thing goes up 6 dB, the other one goes down, and that's how it's going to balance. So it should still be able to do equal volume or go all the way over to one side or the other, but the granularity of it is going to be a lot rougher. I might also throw in, pre and post that are also shiftings of bits, just to see what I get out of that. But yep, we're going to do a console zero style Oxford Inflator, and it will be changed. It will not be exactly the one. Also, I note that I'm having lots of YouTube problems, and it's saying we're not getting enough video. Okay, sorry. I don't know quite what's going on there. I can't control it. Let's switch over to the part where I know it won't have enough video, because it's going to be the screen. And when I do this, it is always not enough video. So let me derp around a little bit to hear. What I'm seeing as far as concurrent viewers is not great. Stream status is poor. Yep. So, if I can't make live streaming work, I won't. I'll switch to video essaying, which is rather funny because in the politics sphere, I tend to favor the live streamers and debate kids more than the video essayists, because a bunch of the video essayists have toxic political opinions, and a bunch of the debate kids have figured things out more effectively, perhaps because they're more quick-witted or are paying closer attention to things. But yeah, so for the time being, it's just 11:06. I have my cup of coffee. I'm only having 2 cups of coffee today, and we're not doing a big marathon thing. And we're going to fire up Xcode and start a new project. It'll be an audio unit, and I'm going to have it be mono. And yeah, well, I'm excited to hear it because I've never quite done this before. I'm going to look up whether one of my controls is similar to that already, because I know that the Purist Console 3, I always forget to say Purist, has a complicated algorithm much like what's in one of the Oxford Inflator algorithms. It's got a more complicated take on that, but we're going to see whether I can change that. And then when I finished doing the stream, may very well be 2 hours of coding, and it may not. I don't know, because then following that, one of the things I have to do is get on the phone with the Internet Install people and do the next thing as far as figuring out what went wrong or whether I need to do anything else to help them, or whether they're just going to reschedule me for another day so I can finally get through to it. I have already decided that I am not willing to unplug the previous internet until the new internet works. I think that's probably reasonable, but I don't see that I have much of a choice in the matter. And so, worst comes to worst, I'm paying like 2 internet providers each month while this is getting resolved, with one of them jacking up my fee insanely. I don't know how insanely yet. I haven't seen what they're going to do to me. I only know that they were jacking up the price to drive me away, because I'm still on copper lines and they need to get rid of all their copper lines, which is relative. I mean, nobody wants copper lines in the age of fiber anyway, so it's like, whatever. So we will call it the inflamer instead of the inflator, because it's not quite the same. Instead of TO, it's ME. And what we're going to do is maybe open up another one of the recent projects. Note that I've got another one that I'm working on, Node Slew. If I burn through this really quickly, I might open that up again. And also note that I've got a bunch of other stuff to do regarding obviously the reverbs, but also I'm doing a bunch of research on getting to that big console thing. I had done some comparative listening using my track Twilight Sparkle's Eyes, and that was on interesting note. I am thinking of getting a purple belt off of Amazon, like not one that's so outrageous that it's shocking, but they come in a plum color, because that makes my look be essentially an ace flag, and I am technically demi, which is not the same thing as ace, but it explains a lot. And the reason that song exists is because I went from one fandom to another, and the other fandom was based off of a property created by or fanficked by Lauren Foss, because it existed before, but she really reinvented it in a big way. And that's what got me. Honestly, that's what got me. It's the fact that I could relate to that property, but suddenly it was a full spectrum of personalities and people that I could know and feel affection for. And being essentially demi, that was what was required to, like, I don't know, flip the switch and turn me on, shall we say. And chaos and madness and years of fun stuff ensued. And I eventually ended up learning more about myself, namely that I identify as demisexual. It explains a lot about how I always struggled and why I can relate so much to, for instance, trans people's struggles, because I grew up with somebody who was trans. And 40 years ago, you couldn't do anything about that, but it was still true. And I grew up with that, so I can never not know the reality of that situation. It's not something that was just made up. This existed when I was a kid, but you couldn't do anything about it. And I didn't know that I was demi. I only knew that I would fall madly in love with people that I got to know, or that I thought that I knew well enough that I really identified their personalities and connected with them on that basis. Got amazingly horny over that, didn't tend to be able to work out those relationships, and had a life of great unhappiness and frustration, but it didn't make me want to run out to bars or just do really casual stuff. Anytime I have done casual stuff, I can do it. I'm even pretty well thought of with that, but doesn't really please me very much. And I don't really it doesn't work well enough for me to want to pursue more. So yeah, like even as a old codger like me, I can relate to a lot of what kids these days get up to or talk about. And yeah, thank you, Nacho Doggy. I will try to be an awesome person, and you do the same. Do likewise. It's an awesome thing to try to do. Be the Keanu Reeves. It's like, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. Because it's like a verb. You know, awesome can be a verb. Practice it as often as possible. Let's see. I'm going to want to look at a recent plugin. And it's going to be the most Paris console, but it's going to be Paris Console 3, and it's going to be the channel version. Because the Oxford Inflator is a saturation, not an anti-saturation. Yeah, well, you're not going to get an exact clone of it, but you might get something that sounds better because that's kind of what I try to do. And Paul Frindle, who is very cool and smart and has great ideas. In fact, I'm following some of Paul's ideas. He thought that if you're making a DAW/mix, the most important thing to do is build in some EQ. Antoine, your RC filter, I never mastered that. Here, I'll show you what we're talking about. Yeah. So Antoine is, I believe, I'm trying to think of where I ran into you, a KVR poster. I'm almost certain that's where I found this. It's a very KVR-ish thing to run across as somebody that just spouts code. I could not make code out of this. I'm writing stuff in C. And this might be C, but I wasn't able to make sense of how it works. Like I can figure out what, $pi means. I can figure out what cutoff hertz means, or how that slider operates, and in fact make my own sliders around that kind of thing. But I was not able to work out how the rest of this worked. I'm very interested, but I wasn't able to make it work. SPL0, V, SPL1, presumably that's the previous sample. I don't remember where we run into this again. In fact, I don't see SPL1 anywhere else in this algorithm. So we got a slider, and the slider is just to make this number, which I can arrive at in my own way. But I wasn't able to do the math for this. Like the input, let's assume that they're double precision values. Maybe we'll walk through that. Why don't we? Oh, JSFX? Okay, well, I do use Reaper, but I'm writing stuff not in Reaper. So SPL0 would be your sample value coming in. I think one of the things that stopped me was what's S? It's minus S or V plus S. We already made V, but we never made, and then S is SPL0 plus V, but we're referring to S up here, so I don't understand. And the order of these arrangements matter. Like I can't just move this up here because that wouldn't make any sense. They're presumably in some kind of order, unless they just go backwards. And I assume that, yeah, I can figure out that $pi would be math pi. I can get to that part. The rest of this, I can't get to. Let's copy some of this stuff over, and then maybe we'll even fool around with that. But there's no special reason not to. One of the thoughts of doing the Oxford Inflator was putting a crossover in it. And that's not an unreasonable suggestion. That said, I might not, because I might keep it really minimalist, but we can certainly code in a filter in the middle of doing it, or just fire up another project and use that. But yep, we have no ongoing factors here. So here is Purist Console 3, sort of all by itself, just that one line of code. We can leave the rest of that stuff alone. If we put that in there, now we're doing Purist Console 3 as this plugin. But we're going to want to do some other things. And here is what would be changed. First of all, let's keep that kicking around. So if I scooch this over here, what I was looking at here is a couple of things, actually. Three divided by 2 becomes 1.5. So we're doing part of this. So you define a variable by using it. Okay, so your variable started out by 0 and is multiplied by that before you... We'll get to that, one thing at a time. So the way this works is minus equals stuff. And what they've got is and that's, we're not actually keeping that way. I don't know how to type the squared thing either, so basically, let's just start copying things and using them. This is not going to be real code, it's going to be pseudocode. And that doesn't actually count because that's being specified as ints. And then minus it's written, think, kind of poorly. So what we've got here is minus 1/16 again times so yeah, it's x squared, x to the power of 3, x to the power of 4. Now the interesting thing about this is that these powers are also going to change the polarity of the number. Some powers are going to keep negative numbers and some powers will always convert them to positive. And that is why the first one starts off as that, and then minus equals, and that has to be all in one calculation actually, so let's not do that part. We're not doing it that way. None of this is going to make sense until I have it finished, okay? Because the way this works We can do this and then minus and that would be our first Oxford Inflator code. It is input sample times 2, but it's minus that, and it apparently scales it in some kind of way. And that's the way that the power function gets involved with it. And the reason I'm doing it rather than doing it in steps, like just below, which isn't going to work, is because if we have this equal sign here, it has to evaluate all of this stuff based on what input sample actually is, and only then change it. So it can't change it and then start using the new value like in here. It's got to use the starting value for everything we have in the equation. Only then does it assign it, and then we move on. If we had it input sample times 2, then it would be power input sample times 2 to the power of 2. Sorry about the visual flashing. We may not end up having to deal with this any longer after a while, because I'm not sure whether I'm not going to just move on to making more videos. I've never really been able to address the contrast issues with what we see here. Doesn't look like my regular videos at all, and I can't make it look nice. Whatever. One thing at a time. I'll figure out some other way of doing live streams if that's the case. We'll do something else. But for the time being, we are still doing another coding live stream. People should tell me if they get a huge kick out of the music live streams, because I honestly feel as if it seems like hot garbage while I'm doing it, and then I can usually pull it together into something that sounds nice. So if I just hid the fact that I was tracking it, then people would be much more impressed. Hey, Heather. To the point that anybody's impressed anyhow. So let's start getting this together. Minus. Yep. And this is just copied over, but what it was originally going to be is minus and then amending these things, kind of like what I think I do have it just correctly placed just above. So the thing to remember about this is I am pretty sure that, and another thing that I might do is music streams that are more along the lines of just playing with I used to do jamming with modular music and having that be the live stream. I could do something along those lines. I don't know. It's always available for trying new things. Radio-free Airwindows, as it were. Here's what we're looking at right now. And this is the way that the algorithm was drawn for me when the guy did the did the explanation of this is how you make the Oxford Inflator sound. Like the top one was definitely this, and then the bottom one is drawn like this, but I don't like the way this is arranged, and I'll tell you why. I think it is evaluating this in some kind of way where it's like, it doesn't just successively subtract each of these things. It's flipping the phase each time. I'm pretty sure that's how that's working. And you'll see that I have it kind of like that for the one that's in Purist Console 3, which approximates to a sine-like behavior. That's going to be similar to what the Oxford thing is doing. They're going to be doing a similar thing. So what I need to do is something where we'll subtract this, but it's this minus this and it's this minus this. So this is being subtracted, this is being subtracted, but this is being added. So what that would be is these two added together because they're both wait. I can go and find the correct value for that, but we will add those things together and remove this because we're subtracting both of those things. But this gets added. So we got this plus that, which is like double subtracted and making it positive. And we're going to change it to, well, actually, no, let's try to see whether we can make it be I don't have an Oxford Inflator to compare this to, but we will keep the equation the same and see if it winds up being the same thing. So what we can do is, additions are all commutative, but we're adding also something that is, it's the same as adding negative this. So this is the part that gets subtracted, and this is the part that gets added, and so if you had the setting at exactly 0, it would be medium amounts of both of these things. If you crank it all the way to plus 50, you get only this. If you crank it all the way to negative 50, you get only this. We're not going to do it quite that way, but we are going to do something. So let's leave gain out. We've got a wet control that will work on parameter 10, so we can pretty much immediately put this into action. And we don't have that as a shifting of bits crossfade yet, but that will come. And this is supposedly about the same as your inflator. Let's see if it builds. It should. Not first, though. First thing it's going to do is not be able to work. Oh, have I not? I've written it wrong. It's becoming upset. That's okay. I knew it was going to become upset. Oh, and you know what? We don't actually want that there. It's hiding within an if statement, so it doesn't actually see that I am in fact using those values. If I wasn't using those values, if what wasn't at 1, then it wouldn't be using those things. Also, I got to fix a couple of bugs, clearly. So, yep, that's a bug. It needs a semicolon. And I've got another bug where I need to specify the version number. That's why it said that. Infl for inflator or inflamer. We're currently doing the inflator version, and then we're going to change it and see what it gets. Make a little alteration and see what we get. Oh, and we're still having problems, aren't we? What's wrong with you? Xspawn? We are still having problems. What's up with that? I think we're having a mismatch of parentheses here. Let's see what these parentheses tell me. That one, it's going to want the parentheses there, and then it's going to want that there, but we are also going to want a parenthesis here. I honestly love throwing parentheses everywhere because it just makes the order of operations explicit. And I much prefer to make order of operations explicit. That's why I'm getting this problem. It's confusing it by using that. Oh, and I failed to do this somehow. That time it built. We got a bunch of unused variables, but that's not going to hurt anybody. Lisp style, too many parentheses. That's the idea. And now let's take a sound. We could start with sine waves and things. How about we do that? That might be fun. Long sine is, I believe, a bassy note. Like that. Oh, that's a pretty loud note. Let me make it much quieter. It's still pretty loud. Live with it. Let's normalize it. And then do a little effect stack with the new plugin. Only thing that matters is the dry wet. And then my trusty span. Yep, that is quite a harmonic. Oh, I'm blasting your ears out, aren't I? Man, that's loud. Okay, well, for the time being, I simply shut it off. So much bass. What were we doing? We were turning the volume down. I want to be able to see what this is. And now that I've got this up and running, if I change it over to the other controller, oh hey, this is the other one. And you get to balance between what appears to be 45 and 90, so that's exactly twice, not 3 times. Well, we're on full crank here. Versus, well, let's look and see what we get. Never mind this. We've got it normalized, so let's just look and see what we got. at full crank, that'd be a bit much. I sometimes wonder whether, yeah, we got a lot of clipping going on there. So maybe we undo that and undo our normalization and try it again and see what we get there. I have a suspicion that this Voxengo spans thing is an asymmetrical, and that's not what most of my stuff is. My stuff is not primarily asymmetrical things, only yeah, this is an asymmetrical processing. That's not necessarily what it's supposed to be, honestly. I'm not sure whether it's meant to hard clip doing this stuff. I have not used Oxford. It's a good thing I'm not going to be calling this inflator because it may not be the right one. But I'll tell you what, if we switch it over to this and then do the opposite, we get something that looks more like a saturation effect. I don't know whether this is normally considered to be a mega subtle effect where you have just this faint touch of a sound. Let's fool with some of the other settings. We did make things louder doing that. That's partly because we turned it up. In fact, we can do a quick little modification, seeing as we're working on this now. Let's make it quieter. This is going to be a decent way of getting a unity gain output. And yeah, I mean, that's what makes it interesting is I don't know how the original one behaves. I've never owned it. I've heard about it. But if we do this, if I get through this, I will turn the audio back on and then start playing with musical sounds rather than just sine waves. But I want to see what these sine waves are doing. So yeah, if we do full the one side, you can see it's pointier on one side. This becomes an asymmetrical distortion. We've just moved everything down. We've dulled one side and pointed the other side. So that's what the 50 is. Whereas, excuse me, full minus 50, we've got more of a clippy quality. I am going to fire up span and see what this is doing because it's a little subtle just looking at the waves. And then here's the interesting part. What do we get when we have it at exactly the middle or nearest dammit? We get a clippy behavior, but it's definitely rounding off one side more than the other. That's interesting. Let's play with span some more. So now this is a more reasonable setting. If we have just the full plus 50, it's really just only making stuff asymmetrical. I don't know whether you get an option to pick the side of asymmetricality you want to make it on. Whereas the full minus 50, we still have a goodly amount of asymmetrical, but we then have another one, which is like, yeah, so this is, let's make this simpler. I do want to have a quick gander at what the middle setting looks like though. And as predicted, it's just between the two. I wonder whether this doesn't have any real odd harmonic distortion at all. That's what I'm now wondering, is whether this is mostly just an asymmetricality adder. Because, like, fine, I don't see why not. It just didn't occur to me to ever make something like that. So it might be a nice little addition to the toolkit. But what we're going to do for the moment is generate a replacement tone. And I want it to be exactly 100 dB. I'm on 100, not 100 dB, 100 hertz. That way I can see exactly which harmonics these are without having to do the math in my head about what 45 hertz multiplied by that really is. So, back to making our effect stack. Back to making span. This sounds like this. Oh hey, since it's not so bassy, it's not blowing everything up so much. That's cool. Also, I cut the volume by 6 dB. So full crank, that's definitely just second harmonic. That's pure asymmetricality. Full minus, that's 200 and 300. Not much in the way of 400, honestly. So there you have it. If this is in fact the Sony Inflator, this is what we've got. It is a simple wave shaper. And full plus gives you purely second harmonic with really good rejection of everything else. You can see that I've got, like, I mean, honestly, running at 44.1K using this, you could be working on 10K tones and still not alias. The aliasing frequency of something as low of a harmonic as this is very, 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 very low. So that means it'll run nicely even without oversampling for most sounds. Like even treble sounds, you're going to generate some higher harmonics, but they're not necessarily going to be so high that they alias. Abrasive upper mids, it'll generate higher harmonics, but not necessarily so much that it'll become abrasive. And then if you want abrasive, you go to less of that second harmonic, but not none, and more of the third harmonic in equal amounts, it appears. You push it and you'll start getting more. I'll do some experiments with that in a moment. And it's pretty distinctly just third harmonic. There's maybe the hint of a fourth or a fifth, but only just the hint of one. So this is also pretty clean. This is a good design. Kudos to Paul for coming up with this one. And you can also see that if you bring it down to 0.5, it's enough like saturation that you're hearing some of that third harmonic, but mostly, and I'm going to turn on my little fan here. This laptop, if I can get it out, hang on while I fool with this, because I feel the laptop beginning to stress out and become unhappy, and we don't want that. There's a cooling system in here. Come on. There we go. So what I'm doing is dragging this cable out. If I can find it. There it is. And there is a anti-cooling system. The little blue light down here also means that it's on. And that'll help cool the laptop off, and that'll be nice. But yeah, what we're seeing is a lovely little design. It's very nice. Look at the way these harmonics fall off. Like, you've got your second harmonic, but then at exactly 0.5, you're starting to see that third harmonic showing up, but it just falls off very smoothly. Let's do what I said I was going to do. We'll take that away. We're going to normalize this to 0 dB. Should still be pretty clean. And then let's do some fades. I think this is going to do my, yep, I have shortcuts in this program for doing this. And we're going to loop back and forth, and we're going to ramp up and down in volume. So back to our effect stack so we can have both of these things happening. Oh, and let's go back to the screen. I was just showing you me turning my cooling fan on. By the way, the 15 folks who were here, yeah, turns out I was able to live stream today because they're not installing the internet today. Once they do, we'll get back to that. I also have my live streamer assigned to an IP address I won't have when I have the new internet, so I don't know to what extent I will run into problems figuring out how to live stream again. We'll see. One thing at a time. I will have to reprogram that in order to make it work. Maybe do a self-assigned IP address. I kind of understand these things, but I'm not good enough at them to really be that great at it. So let's see. Here's our frequency coming in. This is set at the middle setting. And as it starts getting louder, what we're going to see is more harmonics showing up. The higher harmonics show up, the more we start to get stuff that will get into aliasing. In fact, we're hearing that pretty clearly, but we're not really seeing it on span. We're just kind of hearing it come in. It's fading out, so let's boost it all the way over to I want to see if I can make other harmonics show up out of just this algorithm, because it'll be really interesting if I can't. This is the second harmonic generating thing, and it appears to be the full plus 50 of the Oxford Inflator. If that is so, it's an interesting approach. It's a inflator that's not actually a saturator, it's just a reshaper. And this is being really impressive as far as, let me adjust this. I'm hearing noises, but I'm not seeing them in span. What's going on here? It's acting like Twisted Wave has been behaving weirdly for me in a number of reasons. And it's acting like Well, let's briefly stop this. I know something I can do. Let's shift the gain down by a couple of bits just on output, then return to what we were doing. Because if the gain staging of effect stacks is not working the way I think, as we go into full crank, we should be hearing what it's doing. I can also measure that. But this is kind of funky. I'm really not seeing the other harmonics showing up here. I would expect to be seeing other harmonics showing up, and they're not. And I would be expecting to see this second harmonic dropping away as the volume gets quieter, which maybe I will. We'll see. It seems to take a while to get there, but oh yeah. No, that second harmonic that's getting added seems to be almost level insensitive. It's really not changing much. That's interesting. That's interesting, because that means that's going to be applying itself to quiet noises as well, to the point where having a dry wet, not this, but having an actual dry wet. Let's see what happens with the third harmonic. Third harmonic should be dropping away as the level drops off. Weirdly, I'm not sure that's, but I know I am seeing it dropping away, kinda. It drops away to silence and is gone. And then see, it's coming up, but it comes up to the level of what the second harmonic is doing, but the second harmonic is almost there from the start at the same proportion. So this is what's happening with this particular algorithm, is like odd harmonics usually work, you push louder into them. Let's continue to modify this. We're going to boost into our gain as much as we like. Then there's our other gain on the output, and that's making things be quiet again. Let's see where we got. So we're boosting into the effect now to just clip the heck out of it, and then padding it on the output. And as we get louder and louder, we start to see the third harmonic outpacing the second harmonic. Now, if we only had the generation of odd harmonics, we'd start to see even more of them. I'm trying to make it so that I can see more of these harmonics showing up. So let's boost like mad. It's weirding me the heck out here because we've clearly got this. That's what's causing that noise. But I'm not seeing those higher sounds register on span, and that's weirding me out. Here it is coming in. We're going to crank up to the point where it's making a sharp noise. Let's continue pulling that back. A lot of boost into there. And then that's where it's reaching. It's not showing any higher harmonics there. So let's apply this and close it and see what we got. And that's our answer, I think. When we are doing this setting, it's kind of doing a wavefoldy thing. I feel like there's a discontinuity as we cross through the center. Feels like something's happening there. It doesn't look like that is quite... Like, can you see that? It feels like there's a wiggle. It's going up, and then this is a different angle, but it's like it flattens out at the zero crossing, which is odd. But wait, there's more. As we keep boosting, we start to get this. You can kind of see the funniness of the shape. And we're flattening out around the zero crossing. So that's naturally doing a thing that is kind of like the old plugin that I did, High Impact, where it was saturating, but it was also cutting around the zero crossing and flattening that part out. That's an interesting observation. This is an interesting wave shaper. My hat's off to Paul Frindelman, because assuming that this is the algorithm that he did, it sure does do a thing. And the amount of boost that I get on the negative end is really quite striking. It's really sharpening up that point. Back to our process of doing this stuff. So let's do one of these. And then plugin. And then we want span. And then we want another one of our shift bitters. And let's get into playing with this again, because this, of course, was the full minus 50. And we already know that plus 50 gets us a really smooth saturation, where it seems to absolutely refuse to throw any higher harmonics on. This is where we got that really sharp point at the bottom of the waveform. And that's why we're hearing it saturate. It's passing through span without touching anything, and we're only getting clipping if we clip the converters. So if I pad it enough by shifting the beds on the output, then I get a perfect wave-shaped thing. The top is smoothed off. Let's take a moment and investigate this. I want to see if just this one does that thing where it's smoothing out the center of the wave. If we push into this one super hard, what we're getting is it's barely capable of going, it's making it all subtractive. It's making it become this. It's like doubling the frequency. You push hard enough into it, you boost hard enough into it, and you start taking away all your waveform again. Goes from a sine to only negative swing. That's interesting. And then let's do this one more time. I'm not going to be doing this forever, but let's have a gander at what happens. Not even going to bother with span this time. When we do that equally blended. Because in this case it did not smooth out the zero crossings because it never zero crossed at all. That's a weird and interesting result. So this would be the medium setting for presumably Oxford Inflator before I do a change to it, which I'm also going to try. And then let's add another shift bitter. We'll have a brief listen. That's hard clipping. And here is the one in the middle setting. When you push into it super hard and overload it and distort it like mad, you get pretty close to a perfect flat top that I've just padded enormously. And then the negative swing goes and distorts heavily. The negative swing turns into a sharp point, or at least as sharp as this algorithm can do, but it refuses to become a really sharp point. It's really fighting the tendency to throw more harmonics on there. This inflator thing is just resisting generating any higher harmonics no matter what you do. It's even resisting generating higher harmonics than the third harmonic, and I didn't know that was possible. Like the way this is working. Monster19FMX says, "Hi, I can finally catch you live." My internet is not being installed properly. It was supposed to be today, and I wasn't going to stream because it was going to be installing a new internet, and then they canceled it and are presumably bumping me to a different day. So I was able to stream, and I'm doing an Oxford Inflator variation. But yeah, all of this is very stressful. Like if it goes totally wrong, I'll be in bad shape, and if it drags on for long, I'll be paying double internet costs during the time that it's being set up. And if they break the copper DSL, I'm afraid that the company that is selling me the copper DSL and wants to stop doing that, I'm afraid that they're going to sue me for the cost of their equipment if anything goes wrong. So I have to get through all of this so that my fears of things going wrong can stop. And that hasn't happened yet. Here, let me show you one final thing. And we'll do something like an odd harmonic generator. We'll do the sine algorithm. That's a good one. And we'll get that from console, or Purist console original channel. And then we'll add span again. So this is the difference between what that was and a sine calculation. As the level falls off, in the sine calculation we're starting at 100 Hertz. It's not doing any of this 200 Hertz stuff. As we fall off, we start seeing less in the way of saturation. Let's give this huge amounts of gain. See? We're seeing more and more of these harmonics show up. We're pushing harder and harder. And they sort of get added one at a time. And this is pushing into, actually, the Purist console channel is a wave shaper. So yeah, that's what this is doing. So it's not really quite the same. But one thing we can see, if I move this out of the way and do this over, as the gain starts going up, you're seeing third harmonic, fifth harmonic, seventh harmonic. They start adding in the harder you push. And if we push even harder, we'll start losing the original one because it starts wrapping around. It's a wave folder, this one is. But see how we've got 300, 500, little 700? It's like that. That's not what this Oxford Inflator thingy is doing. Not even slightly. So if we were to say take a drum sound, here's a nice long drum sound. And if it's not a bass note, it's not overloading the microphone too hard. And if we took that and threw this new effect on it, what we're getting bypass, and we turn it on, we can plainly hear how this is generating higher harmonics. This is plus 50, minus 50, in the middle. Brilliant stuff, man. I gotta hand it to Paul Frindle for coming up with this. And that's just about all it's doing, so we're not anywhere near aliasing here. We can even run this into the measurement. Here's our measurement. I need to make this not be as smooth. Let's have it be that. So we can see how high that stuff is coming up, but then if we shut this off, it looks kind of similar, honestly. I'm not going so hot into it, but let's boost it. It feels like it's definitely extending up a little bit, but yeah, this is generating lots of second harmonics. That means higher frequency content on everything. Those cymbals, the cymbals are getting loads of second harmonic added. Take it all the way down. Leaning a little more in the third. There's our middle setting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Oh, Athera has a question. How does the Console 8 work with it? If you're just sort of mixing and matching stuff, then just do that, honestly. Like, Console 8 is meant to work all with its own stuff. The filtering that it has is designed to work a certain way. Console 0 also kind of works similarly, but it has an entirely different kind of filtering. And Pure's console filtering doesn't have any filtering at all. Channel 9 doesn't do it. Well, I'm not sure whether it does or not. Does it do ultrasonic? I don't remember. I feel like I only have 2 hours in me today, so we're going to cut off after this, but Channel 9 does have an ultrasonic filter in it. If not two. Pre and post. Yes. Channel 9 does have ultrasonic filtering in it. Bus Colors 3 does not. Yeah, local hero, well, thank you. I am expecting that there's going to be a Mackie-style named console version coming out. Working on that stuff. So that will involve preamp distortion that will act like Mackie and Mackie-Q. Unbox is different. Unbox is like its own thing. You know, you can use bus colors as just an added distortion. It doesn't have to work with console versions. Use it for like additional saturation. Use it like its own little distortion box. Don't assume that it's going to be built into a system. All the systems kind of are meant to work inside themselves. And you can always mix and match and fool around with all of that, but it doesn't mean that it's meant to work that way. Let's get back to what I was doing as long as I am still up for streaming. Because I don't think I'm going to last past 1 o'clock, but we've made some nice progress, and this was really cool, learning more stuff about how this algorithm works, because it's really interesting. The next thing is, having got this, we figure out what we can do with this, and then also do our step version of that. The unsayable program. Oh, hang on. Don't you do that. We're trying to do this. Almost all of the plugin is just there. Don't really need that stuff. Don't really need these. Let's see if that builds. Nope. That's okay. This is what we're working on. So here's our lookup tables. I'm going to be figuring out which of these gets used. Hang on. That doesn't make any sense. Let's not do that. Give me a minute while I get through this. Also not want that. Or maybe we do. There. Now we do have the dry wet, and it does actually work, but we haven't assigned yet wet to anything. I'm going to take a moment and peek outside because I don't know if you hear it, but I hear a big old truck out there, and I'm curious whether it's like somebody trying to fix the internet. Maybe they'll start doing that after all. Not expecting it. Nope. Nope, that's not what it was. Some people picking up a dumpster at a house nearby or something. So, I don't remember what the setting is that you use on Inflator. I'm going to take a moment and look that up. I do have a web page open. So they call it curve. And effect. Well, that's something that could be kept. That'll be simply a wet dry. And the crossfade part becomes curve, but it'll be a kind of pointy curve because it's going to be in steps. In 6 dB steps specifically. And we're going to see whether that sounds better. Because it could be just minus 50 to 50 mapped to effectively a wet dry, a crossfade, like we've already done. Wonder if it builds now. Nope, switch quantity is not an integer, so that doesn't build. And 2 levels of this. It'll build now. Won't help much, but it'll build now. Well, it won't because I didn't haven't done this yet. I'm doing all the bits that are really obvious. So first we apply the input gain. Then we do this. We'll probably not set it up to boost too hard, I guess. I don't know. Because there's nothing to be gained from it. It's not a clipper, so a bit of a moot point. Alrighty. So there's a couple things I was going to try. I do have to define some of these things. That's a start, though. So now this will, in theory, work. But we don't have it set up to do this yet. But we can make this so that it's not actually padding. And then I'm going to turn to some other plugins to find what I'm doing with it. Yeah, that one's not necessarily the one that I want. That's not what I wanted to do, but this is. And now if I open up those drums again, gain does nothing. Oh, hello. Okay, we got all kinds of things happening here. This is clearly not a thing. This is clearly our dry wet. Yep, something's wrong. Let's fix it. By what do you mean by MP? I don't understand what you mean by MP. I'm not sure I even want this gain trim. So why was that super not doing what it was supposed to? Oh, it was a joke. Okay. No, not this one. It is an algorithm done by a very clever fellow, Paul Frindle, when he was working for Sony Oxford. And it turns out this is a really cool thing. What it is doing is very smoothly adding exactly second harmonic and balancing that out with adding a kind of saturation. So you can dial in. Essentially what it's doing is basically just treble, sparkle, and warmth. It's making everything a little more asymmetrical, and it is really restricting, like it will not add more high harmonics the louder you hit it. It's very, I might even lose the gain trim. This is supposed to do what it's supposed to do. It really shouldn't be misbehaving in the way that it is. Yeah, let's in fact lose that and leave only the effect. Please select for me, thank you. Don't need that. Won't be needing that. Yeah, I mean, if this is not an effect that saturates as you hit it harder, which it mostly is not, then there's no point in worrying about the input gain. It's nothing but a sort of transformery-like beast. The effect part is the part that matters. Although I have heard people advise that you don't handle it that way, so that's another question. Well, let's leave this alone for now. So the way this should be working is, oh, let's do it oppositely. Maybe that will help. And let's leave out that other bit. So right now we don't have this. And we can remove that. And I do need to rename, well, no, I don't want to rename those. I'm probably going to go back to the gain thing. Somebody was talking about how you should turn effect up all the way and then gain stage into it, which does not necessarily make sense. But it makes a little bit of a sense, because there is still a third harmonic. And while it didn't really seem to be doing much, in theory, it's still kind of, what are you doing? Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Erg. Remove that. Let's try this again. Yeah, I'm not sure that's necessarily a thing. It seems to me as if the thing that this applies is better manipulated by the effect level. You don't necessarily want to gain stage into it. With some applications of it, that's not going to do anything. I don't know. I don't know. Here's our gain trim. I'm just trying to figure out whether any of this makes sense, but it's acting I had it doing a thing and it's not doing the thing anymore, and I want it to do the thing. I'm frustrated. So, we want it to be plus 50, mostly Inflamer plus. That actually means it needs to be this. Because if curve gets cranked out, that means it's all Inflamer plus. That means this should be the other one. We'll call it negacurve instead of anticurve. And both of these could do with, no. No. See, this is supposed to work. This here is supposed to work. Oh! Am I getting this right? No, I think that's still what it's supposed to be. The dry sample part is correct. This crossfade between Inflamer plus and Inflamer minus, we are in fact assigning the results of those two input samples. That is what it's supposed to be. If it's halfways, then it's 0.5. We don't necessarily need to be cutting this by 0.5 here. So let's leave that off, build it again. See what we get. It's misbehaving. Hi, Jazz. We'll fire it up again. I feel I can hear the harmonics, and I feel I can see it doing this on the meters. Quite a lot lower. Whereas if you crank curve, that's when you're going to get the largest peaks. They're all negative peaks. Okay, so Let's open up a different plugin. Let's see what we got going on here. Not all this is going to work for me. This is doing it all as one piece. That's not what I'm going to want. Don't like that. Don't like it at all. Yeah, I am very frustrated. I am very frustrated. This is not going well. I can't think today. But then there's been so much stress going on and so much happening that it's no wonder I can't think today. That said, discovering all of that stuff about Inflator was very interesting. Maybe rather than trying to get to the bottom of this right now, because that's not going to be what I want, I'm going to have to make it from scratch, what I'm imagining. What it's going to have to be instead is, let's find out from some recent stuff. Oh wait, don't even need, why am I doing this? Yeah, I'm frustrated and I can't think. There will come times when I'm able to think. Today is not going to be one of those times. But I'll tell you what I can do. I can come up with some approximations for the shifting of bits version of some of these things, and then we can hear it. Because I believe we're hearing this, even if I can't do the final bits. No pun intended. I will be able to do the final bits, but I need to go and lie down for a bit. No pun intended. But 3 divided by 8, I can figure out what the approximation of that's going to be. And this I can't change. There's no step between 1 and 2, so 1.5, I'm going to kind of have to need that to... Well, no, wait. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We could have those both starting at about the same. So let's make a couple of changes. That's not going to be one of them. There we go. Let's BSG the whole thing out. 3 divided by 8. So what's my closest options to 0.375? It's going to be between 0.5 and 0.25. So what's happening is, wait, let me save this. Before I get into this, commented out version is the original. New version starts from the same base boost, which is a shifting of bit boosts. And then this gets changed. It's going to be either 0.5 or 0.25, but, well, no, wait. We're trying to subtract stuff from it. We made it larger. We're adding the third harmonic. It's either going to be 0.25 or 0.5. Let's try both. That's a comma. And we want to see which is which. Yep, those should be working. There, now it's under control. And now it's being applied. And we've changed the minus . Yes, I do. Where's my sign? There's it. Back to this stuff again. Gain trim shouldn't be doing anything. And we only care about this. And we need to see the results in span. And we're distorting the output massively, so let's fix that. The changes we have made are giving us a much louder third harmonic, but we're also getting a fourth harmonic. Interesting. Try wet. And if we go here, we're getting so purely just a second harmonic that there's like nothing going on. But man, do we quickly start getting these other ones. And that is with one of our settings. Gain trim is now giving us two options. They're very similar. But one of them's making that third harmonic louder. And we sure are getting a strong fourth harmonic. I'm not sure whether that is because I changed the other bit. You can clean that up nicely that way. I'm looking to see how loud that fourth harmonic is, how that's changing. Zero 0.5, 0.25. You know what? I want to see whether that was supposed to be there. Previous stuff I was doing was not showing fourth harmonic. So that's my change. This is the original. As you can see, the original, the input sample is only 1 times 1.5 rather than the shifting of bits that I have here. I want to see whether that's a significant change sound-wise and harmonics-wise. Might be just the same thing, honestly. Oh, nope, that's the original one. That fourth harmonic was there. See, original, no change there. And as such, we can fade it right out with the dry wet. As soon as we start bringing in the negative stuff, that fourth harmonic, that's meant to be there, not an accident. And it's kind of quieter relative to the other stuff, so that's significant. So considerably louder and pulled back to the point where these harmonics are about the same level, and we do have that fourth harmonic there. So the question now is, firstly, can I remember to do this properly so that I'm not breaking it? And then put that back in, and we'll start some experiments. And one of the experiments is, let's see whether we even need to multiply that at all. Or that we get some kind of useful sound out of like exaggerating it a little bit. We're doing this sort of, can we out-inflate? That's why we're calling it inflamer. Is can we outdo what the inflator did by leaning really heavily on this mantissa juggling stuff? which means also that it will be a different effect, meaning that it is not straight up a ripoff of the inflator. It's doing some of the same things, but I'm intentionally changing it. Effect, firstly, give me that old time 100 Hertz. And this and this. I've already called it Inflamer. We're going to just have to live with that, I think. Okay, so here's our Inflamer. Full wet. Using curve cranked up all the way, that part's not changed. This is the part that has. With this setting, we have a pretty strong fourth harmonic, and the third harmonic is distinctly louder. And with this, so if we do this here, then we have the two harmonics at about equal levels, whereas if we push it further, but not that way, we can make that third harmonic be slightly louder. Then if we do let's assume the middle setting is the correct one. The differences here mean that with this, our third harmonic is a little bit louder relative to the others. And with this, they fall off pretty evenly. I kind of like the idea of that. Maybe this is a good arrangement. What's it like if you bypass it? We've got a tiny level boost, but that's not necessarily the worst thing, because it would be more this way. And with this, it's less. So setting it to 0.5. Yeah, I think I like what we got. I think I like where this went. Just in time, too. Just in time for me to shut down for the day. We have a Oxford Inflator variation. And what it does is it remaps the internal calculations so that they are all only doing multiplications or divisions by shiftings of bits. And we've rearranged one of the equations in here so that it will tend to emphasize in a particular way that causes these higher harmonics to show up. And it'll kind of attenuate when it's making those higher harmonics show up. And in the medium setting, it kind of balances. So I think the next things to do are to make that stop, like dial in some of those corrections so that they are implemented. And then I'm probably going to make that curve control be stepwise, be implemented by 6 dB increments, so that it can apply that as well. and I'll maybe do that over the course of the afternoon. But for now, I'm going to say good day for now, and I'm going to go and have a bit of a rest, and I'll catch up with you guys later. This might, well, no, every console is next week, so this could be the week after that. Give me 2 weeks and I'll definitely have figured these bits out. And on that note, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.